In this video, I'm going to be talking about turnkey rentals, and are they as good as people say they are, or are they just a money trap? I got some comments from some people. Actually, luckily it was few people that talked about these turnkey rentals as a scam. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why they might think it is a scam, and how to avoid some of the traps that are associated with some of the turnkey rental providers out there. And why people think it's these turnkey rentals are not as good as they say they are is because they do sound a little bit too good to be true. I mean, when you do a cash-on-cash return of some of the properties that we have, we're talking about 12 to 15% cash-on-cash return. It seems very, very unusual and very high. So people are a little bit skeptical about these returns and whether they're true returns or not. Part of the problem is they also feel that they overpaid for the property, or sometimes they close on the property and it took them a few months sometimes to find a tenant that would pay the rent that was advertised initially. Or they had some tenant issues with the tenant, or they had some issues with the property itself, something that broke shortly or within a year after they've acquired the property. So all of these things could be valid, but there are ways to reduce the risks associated with that. Remember, in the previous video, I talked about changing mindset. Basically, when we are an investor, when you become an investor and an entrepreneur, it is a little bit of a different mindset. You have to do your due diligence. You have to know what you are investing in. You have to have the skills, and if you don't have the skills, find the knowledge from other individuals to make sure that what you're investing in is the right property and it makes sense. So it is a little bit different. This is not like, once you're an investor, you're not considered a consumer anymore. They expect, the government, the laws expect that you are aware of what you're doing and that you have the right skills to invest. As a consumer, the government is protecting the consumer. So, it is a little bit different mentality. You cannot just keep your receipt for the turnkey rentals property that you bought and say, oh, I don't want it anymore, it doesn't fit my lifestyle or something like that, give me my money back. This is not the same. You're not a consumer anymore, you're an investor. With that said, with a little bit of a tough talk, I would say that this is there are ways to avoid falling into some negative traps, and so we're going to talk about that. First, deal with a turnkey provider that is reliable, someone that has a good reputation. You can even talk to get some references from them and talk to them and see what good experience. A lot of them also have some testimonials on their website and stuff like that, so you can look at that. But also understand kind of the turnkey providers, their process. How do they work? What do they expect from you, and what you should expect from them? And then really have a good understanding of what's your responsibility, what's their responsibility, and then what happens after that. Once you buy the property managers, what's the property manager's responsibility at that point, etc. So really have a clear understanding of what your responsibility is at every stage of the process. Is very important. That way you won't be disappointed if you expected that the turnkey provider would do something and they never had that in their mind, that they would perform this particular task. So this is why it's important. Same thing with property managers. If you have the wrong expectation about what the property managers will do for you, then you want to get all these things cleared out so that you know what falls on your shoulder and is part of the things that you have to do. Then often you would go on the turnkey rental provider website, or you would get a spreadsheet with a couple of turnkey rentals opportunities, and then they would calculate some returns. The key here is that for you to really understand, have a clear way for you to compare the different turnkey and have your own template, do your own calculation on the returns, so that you can compare the returns from one property over the next. I would recommend that you look at the cap rate, but also look at your cash on cash return. How much down payment are you going to do? What net cash flow do you expect after that? are going to be key components that you want to do. There are no real standard ways of presenting your cash on cash return or your net cash flow, especially around there's two components in here that are in contention. Typically is your vacancy and your maintenance. Most of the turnkey providers out there and most of the investors that are looking at calculating their cash on cash return would not include, I do not particularly include vacancy and maintenance as part of the net cash flow. I don't include that as an expense for the net cash flow. I consider that as a, kind of like a reserve that I would put aside for every month in case there is vacancy in the future and for when there are repairs. When you calculate the net cash flow, I would calculate the gross rent minus the property management, insurance, property taxes, any kind of other items that need to be in there, like utilities maybe. Then you would take out the mortgage, you would come up with your net cash flow. Okay, so no, I wouldn't include vacancy in there, and I would not include the repair and maintenance because these would be reserved. Then you would calculate, you would divide that by the amount of money that you put in. I would include your down payment as well as any closing costs associated with that. That would give you your cash on cash return. As long as you're consistent when you're comparing from one property to the next, you should be able to figure out which property has the best return. So this is what I recommend. So even if you look on the website and you see that this is like 10% or this is 20% return or 12 or 15, just get the details from the turnkey rental providers, and so that you can calculate, you make sure that all the cash on cash returns is the same across all the different properties that you're comparing with. When we talk about paying too much for a property, a lot of turnkey providers, they buy, like ourselves, Martel Turnkey, we buy distressed properties, we renovate them, and then we find a tenant, etc. And then we sell it to turnkey investors like yourself who want to build a passive income portfolio. So how much are paying too much? How do you know you're not paying too much? Well, the value of these single family rentals is determined by comparable sales. So you're looking at the price of other comparable single family home in the neighborhood, houses that have the same kind of area, the same kind of configuration, the same level of finish, and also kind of like the same number of bedroom, the same number of square foot as well. So that would give you a pretty good approximation of the value of the property. The other thing to look at is that when you look at the properties that were sold that had the same kind of size and same kind of finish, you want to have something that has sold within the next 6 months normally. This should give you a pretty good idea. The data is available on the website, on the Zillow and Trulia and stuff like that, so you can figure out on your own what it is. Typically, most of the investors, they don't really know how to do the comparable sales, and honestly, most realtors don't know how to do comparable sales either. So you know, this is a little bit of a tricky point. But then you can talk to your turnkey providers and say, hey, you know, what kind of comparable sales have you looked at to come up with this price? Finally, if you're gonna go and do have a mortgage on this property, the bank will require an appraisal. So they're going to send an actual professional appraiser to evaluate the value of the property. At that point, you should have something that's pretty firmed up in terms of the price. At Martel Turnkey, what we do is that if the appraisal value that comes from the bank is below the price that we sold it to you at, then we're going to reduce the price to that appraisal value. We think that all turnkey providers should do the same thing. The turnkey providers are the expert in that area. They should know what the value of the property is. And I know that some turnkey providers basically are looking at this and say, well, no, you just need to put more money down. But that affects everything. That affects your whole cash on cash return and of the property. So it doesn't really make sense to ask the buyer for more money because it didn't appraise and they cannot get the mortgage that they expected to get. About finding the tenant, it takes too long to find the tenant. Some turnkey providers actually sell the property empty without a tenant, so it's been renovated, but then after that they go and they start looking for a tenant. So there's a couple of problems with that. The first problem is that there's a significant cost that gets incurred when you rent to a tenant for the first time. So typically for these properties it'd be like equivalent to 1 month rent. So you're losing 1 month rent to property management fee. Second of all, you are losing rent because you don't know when you're going to get a tenant. So it takes some time to get the tenant in. So you're going to lose 1 month, maybe 2 months rents, maybe more sometimes to get the tenant in place. Third is that sometimes the rent is not as high as you expected. So your whole calculation on cash return was based on a specific gross rent that would come in at a specific time, and now all of a sudden instead of getting $950 a month, you're getting $900 a month. Again, the turnkey providers should know what the rental rate should be for that property, but now somehow you're responsible now for getting that rent. And so this is why we think it's important that there should be a tenant in place before we close on the property. And this is what we do at Turnkey, Martel Turnkey. We basically make sure that there's a tenant before we close so that your property is cash flowing from day one. Being a landlord, owning a rental property is not for everyone. Things happened with rental properties. If you have one single family rental, it seems like it's magnified because all of a sudden if the tenant moves out, then this is a month, basically it's 100% vacancy. If there is any kind of repairs that need to be done, then everything seems to be amplified. But this happens. So even if you've recently purchased a turnkey rental property, it could still happen that there are repairs that need to be done after the fact. You can prevent that by doing an inspection up front if you think that this should have been caught in an inspection. You can also have a home warranty that's gonna also pay for the cost if the furnace fails, or if the HVAC breaks, or if there's some major mechanical issues happened, then the home warranty can come in and pay for that for a minimal fee. You have like a call fee. Basically, I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but the more properties you have, the less worrisome it is for some people. You can have your risk spread out. So if you have 100 properties and then 5 of them or one tenant is not, one of the properties is vacant, one of the unit is vacant, then it's only 1% vacant. But of course, if you have one single family rental and it is vacant, then it's 100% vacancy. So it's a big difference. We have lots of apartment buildings. We have like 5 apartment buildings in Memphis, and then about 100 units, and it doesn't really, we always have apartments that are vacant. We always have apartments that are being renovated. We always have apartments that have problems. And then it's just a question of, getting these things done, getting these apartments updated, getting them marketed and rented out again. It's not as bad as it looks, and our vacancy and our payout rate is doing very well. So we don't have to worry too much about that. But it's also a question of mentality. I mean, some people are going to be, even if they have only 5% or 3% vacancy, it's going to be something that will worry them. It's not really part of their lifestyle or their DNA. In that particular case, then you may want to look at something beside turnkey rentals for your passive income. Maybe it's doing a syndication and have somebody else manage everything for you and send you something. Maybe it's private money lending. So you may have to look at other alternatives beside turnkey rentals for your passive income. So again, this is part of business of having a turnkey rental and then having the right mindset to manage that property. I hope you found this video enlightening, that you learned something about turnkey rental business and why it is a very good business, but it's not a business that has no issues or no difficulty. Like all businesses, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to Click the thumbs up that you like the video. It's going to help really the YouTube algorithm distribute the video to a broader audience. If you are interested in entrepreneurship, real estate, investment, financial freedom, watch the rest of the videos in my channel. Make sure that you subscribe and that you click that notification bell to be notified whenever a new video is being published on my channel. Thank you very much.